Welcome back to Eliminate the Gap here. We have a great episode for you guys today. So hopefully you are ready, and we're gonna talk to some great people. And Eric, why don't you just go ahead and introduce?
You bet, absolutely. And I'd like to know if we could say the word great a few more times. I think we might.
It is great though.
It is. What can you do? I mean, it is what it is.
Stuff.
Sometimes the word is exactly what it is. So on this episode, it's really focused on youth workers and tips as we're going into the summer season. And we wanted to get some folks here that have some really specific things for many of you to think about, to use this summer. And so our feature interview this morning is with Jennifer Brady from Development Without Limits, which is a great organization, and you'll hear more about the organization and her work here in a moment. And then after that, our community spotlight will be on Allianza Dominicana in Washington Heights in New York City. A great program doing good work for many years. So we look forward to getting more in depth with them here toward the end of the episode. However,
summer's right around the corner. Summer's right, and that's why this is so great.
It is great, and we are ready to rock and roll. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to Jennifer Brady.
So we're really delighted to have our guest today, Jennifer Brady from Development Without Limits. Very excited to have her expertise for you all. So Jennifer, let's just jump right in here and just give folks a quick understanding of the organization and what you all do, and then we can jump into some specifics.
Sure, thanks. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here. So Development Without Limits was founded in 2000 with the belief that every young person really must get what they need to fulfill their own human potential and pursuit of happiness. So we have found that that's especially true, of course, for young people coming from communities that have historically experienced racism, redlining, and deep poverty. And so when we have adults that are working with youth, our focus is really on building skills, knowledge, and actions that they can use as they work alongside young people. And so DWL provides professional learning and consulting services to support staff and leaders who work with young people to do their jobs better. Really to focus on youth-driven programming, anti-racism, healing-centered work, and fun, making sure that young people are able to learn through fun.
And I can tell you, Delmar and I both came in working in the DC area around that time as well. And there was so many exciting things really emerging in this thing called positive youth development at that time when you all were founded. And I know we have a lot of history in common with folks from your organization and where Delmar and I worked. So one of the things I've really, if I can say, enjoyed during the pandemic, but I'm going to, has been Development Without Limits blog posts. I mean, they've been super helpful. And you
great.
And your team that have put them together. And believe me, we'll have a link here at the end for you all to go back and check out some previous ones, but they've just been on point during it all, in my opinion, and I've shared it widely.
Thanks.
But it turns out that as we kind of scheduled you for this segment to really begin thinking about the summer and what us youth workers can do best to help meet young people's needs as we kind of emerge from all of this. It turned out that you all had a blog post come out just a few days ago, really around this topic. So once again, Delmar, we got lucky that the timing all kind of worked out well.
We're in sync. We're in sync.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
So there's one of the things that you talk about in the post, and and I wanted to kind of just tease out a little bit is you talk about, I mean, certainly there's a call to action from Secretary of Education and others around really all of our responsibility to meet the needs, the emotional needs in particular of young people. But there's funding actually named and available as part of this kind of call. Help us understand what that is, and maybe where folks who haven't didn't know that, where they might begin to ask questions and look for.
Sure. So there's a record amount of funding available for the America Recovery Program Rescue Plan. So it's the ESSER funds is what the name is, and it's under America Cares. Really, what this is money that is dedicated from the federal government, dedicated to support schools and youth serving organizations to support young people and help them get ready to come back to school. So I think looking at the After School Alliance is a really great website. They've got lots of information about how programs can access those funds. So my understanding is it'll be federal money that goes to the states. States will disperse, but programs, youth serving programs, do qualify to get the funding. Out of all of that funding conversation, though, of course, my something that's kind of needling me is we don't want the funding to drive program decision making. We do want programs to be funded. We want programs to access those funds, and we want young people to get services that they need and be able to participate in opportunities. But we also I always want to encourage programs to really be thinking about addressing the needs of their young people and communities first, and then saying, how do I get the funding to support what we need to do, rather than contorting to, get whatever, say the words that the funding requires. There's a lot right now. It's focused on learning loss and social emotional learning, but the key words are learning loss. And so that's, a little bit troubling term, I think, but there's lots of money available. So I think we should go for it and try to do our work.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, you got some tips for those out there that are looking to kind of, I guess, pinpoint those strategies as we move forward? I know that's part of your most recent blog. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, totally. So I think, well, like I started to say, the first thing is to find out what the young people and families in your service area really need and want. I think there's a kind of broad thought that young people have experienced learning loss, but we know that actually young people have probably learned a lot this year about how they learn, about how to live and work in isolation, how to make dinner. I don't know, like lots of different things. We've learned learning doesn't stop is my point. But I think really tuning into what it is the young people in your community and what families are needing is the first place to go. So that's, what programs are doing anyways. And then, or, presumably they're doing that anyways. And then I think it's prioritizing. So one of the things that's challenging, as you both well know, it's hard to choose what the focus should be of a summer program or an out of school time program. You can't do everything. You can't solve all the problems in the world in one 6-week block of time, or whatever block of time you have. So you really have to prioritize around what's important for the young people in your program. And that means asking families, talking to the teachers, hosting a town hall, hosting Zoom meetings, really shaking the trees, which I think is, it sounds like, oh, that's not rocket science. And yet so many of our clients still don't do it. They don't just pick up the phone and call families. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to do. But it pays off because then you're meeting, then you're actually designing programs that meet the needs of the young people you're serving. So
one of the things that just real quick that in our conversation before was I said to you, hey, I'm really concerned that there's a lot of trauma and baggage that young people are going to be showing up to summer programs with, that people who run maybe a traditional art camp may not be staffed to address. And I hadn't seen a lot of funding specifically toward that. And that's all true. And you have some good tips on that. But one of the things you said back was, you know what? We have to make sure, though, knowing that we're still keeping things fun.
Yeah.
That it's been a drag for everybody. And let's make sure that we're at least keeping fun in the forethought. So talk a little bit more about that part, because that really resonated with me.
Yeah, I think that's part of the trauma-informed programming is as youth program providers, we need to create structures and relationships where young people feel safe and able to learn and have fun. And so part of programming is the work that we've always done in positive youth development, building positive relationships and creating spaces where young people feel safe. And then within that, their brains that have been traumatized through this year and maybe beyond, are more open and able to be creative and imagine and learn through play. So I think from the staff perspective, we're doing similar things that we've done previously, but maybe with more intentionality to really ensure that we're building relationships. So taking extra care to build positive relationships with young people and provide those spaces for safety, so that young people can have learning experiences that are enjoyable. I mean, this, in my opinion, this is what's really been lacking. I mean, I think teachers and youth program providers have been doing everything they can to make Zoom learning fun and engaging, and yet it doesn't feel the same. Del, you could probably speak to that. Just doesn't feel the same. So I think as much as we can do when going to in-person programming or blended programming, we want to focus on building those spaces that are youth-friendly and really relationship-driven, and then can focus on. I mean, that's part of our focus. Is we want young people to feel like this is engaging. This is what they want to be doing. That there's enjoyment in learning, and so that's where I think we've got a big role.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I know that, again, because of the pandemic, there's become a much more comfortability with youth organizations with being able to themselves do professional development through online, through video, these kinds of things. And I know you all have really stepped up to the plate to continue to do what you all have already been doing really well. Talk about some of the programs and services that you all offer that folks out there can begin to access if they're not already, now that we've developed this kind of habit now of being online and seeking out resources.
Yeah. So one thing we've heard from clients is that they can do staff development remotely. You know, even in like New York City, it's challenging to bring everybody together. You know, the travel in person has always been preferred in our field, but it has a lot of challenges. And so shifting to this Zoom culture or remote culture, I think has opened up a lot of possibilities and have taught us all that we can do this, and that maybe staff development remotely is okay and effective, and definitely more efficient, especially as we're bringing on staff for summer. Because, you know, summer staffing comes in waves. People are being hired now, and then they don't start for a couple months or several weeks, or they're hired the day before, and they've got to get quick staff development right away. So one thing that we're doing, we just launched our self-guided online PD that is really focused on preparing staff for summer. So staff that haven't worked in summer programs before, or staff who are coming back to summer, we've got self-guided trainings that organizations or individuals can access. And so it's been so fun to develop, and pull all of our best thinking together and all the stuff that we know staff need. So we've got that.
Cool. I know one of the things you had on your blog in regards to preparing for the summer and things like that are some things that I've actually used in the classroom, like creating a tournament bracket when you're talking about that face off, and using things like Jamboard, which we're really familiar with. Can you talk a little bit about how you utilize that? Because that's a great way to engage learners.
So for youth-facing staff, so people who are working directly with young people, I think there are a ton of different strategies if you are in person or remote or doing the hybrid kind of thing. So one of the tools that we've also kind of put out there is this whole set of live online learning activities. So we've got a whole bunch of different kind of icebreaker and community builders that you can do whether you are in person or remote. And so, for example, there might be activities where young people are moving around. You ask them to, well, we did one that's like kind of a virtual drum circle. So just grab what is nearby and start a beat. And in Zoom, of course, it's all a little weird. It's not all fitting together. But, the point of that is really to gel the group, build community, and enjoy what you're doing. Have some fun with that. So those are some of the things that we are putting out there as just activities to do. We're thinking that people are going to be maybe going back and forth between in-person and online. Like if there is a COVID scare, then you got to shut down for a week and go to online. So we're trying to provide activities that are really quick and easy to pull. So in that moment that you're like, oh no, I have an online class, suddenly what should I do here? So we've got a stack of activities for that. It seems like we kind of need to be prepared for every scenario all the time, which is exhausting for educators and youth-facing staff and for leaders. I mean, this is a lot. This is a lot of juggling. So we're doing our best to try to provide what we can to support everybody.
That's I appreciate you going through some of those. That's just some good stuff there. As Delmar and I like to say, some good stuff. One of we could go all day. I got one more kind of question area, and then we'll kind of bring that to a close. But also in our kind of earlier conversation, we talked about you beginning to see and hear about, at least anecdotally, that there is a scarcity potentially of youth workers or folks who normally do seasonal camps. There's maybe some reluctance this year. So help kind of give folks greater confidence or things that they maybe can research or what it is that might allow them to cross that line and actually continue to serve young people this summer.
Yeah, I think that is what we're hearing, that people who are working during the school day are tired and maybe typically would work in the summer programs, but this year are saying, you know what, I just can't do it. Or young people who are maybe high school or college are coming up to say, hey, maybe I want to work in a program, but I have never worked with young people before. So I feel like we've got two sets of people. So one, the new staff, we want to try to energize them and give them that big view of this is a really important job that you're doing, and our focus is to build positive relationships with young people and support them in having fun this summer while they are learning. And then staff that are kind of on the fence, like I have typically worked in summer programs, but not sure I can do it this year. One of the things we're doing is we're hosting a
that's some of our listeners calling already.
Yeah, right. Well, one thing we're doing, we're hosting. I don't know if this is going to work, if this is a good idea or not good idea, but we're going to have a leadership retreat. So, self-guided series of sessions where after school and summer and out of school time providers can kind of take themselves on a retreat where we are going to focus on mindfulness practice, building your own healing-centered work, and was mindfulness, healing, and building your own emotional intelligence. So the idea is invest in yourself as a staff member and as a leader of youth programs. Spend the time working on getting yourself ready this summer so that you're ready to go back in the fall. So whether you're ready to do summer programming or not, it's okay. Like, don't beat yourself up over it. It's okay. If you need a break, take a break and spend the time like planning and getting yourself back in touch with what you need so that you can be ready for the fall. I think that's our big message, is just to really take time for self-care, and we've got this leadership retreat thing that we're doing to offer some food for thought and guidance on that.
Wow, that's really important, and we'll certainly share that information with it as we distribute this excerpt. We wanted to do this a little differently because we wanted this part to stand alone on its own, because I know a lot of our audience is very much interested in the content, particularly today. Our full broadcast will be available sometime early next week, and this will be a part of it for sure. But we will make this one available separately, so we want folks to be able to consume this as quickly as possible, because there's a lot. Summer's right here. Delmar was just talking about he's already planning graduation stuff coming up in the next month, so we're right up on it. Anyway, Jennifer, we couldn't thank you enough for taking some time with us today and giving us just really, really rich content. Very happy for you to have joined us today.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great day.
So, look at that.
That was some good stuff. One thing I kind of want to, what I thought about, and what I think there needs to be more conversations around that thing where she talked a little bit about funding. Typically, more often than not, does drive how things are run, and people have to go get their money, right? And I really would like for us at some point in time, we'll probably try to find some ways to talk, have more conversations around, hey, how can programs, whether it be after school or even at the educational level, get funding, even with their programs maybe not hitting specifically on a particular the keyword she was talking about there was learning loss, but there's always keywords, and they might not exactly fit in, and not all programs can have grant writers for that fact that can wiggle their way around those terms. So that's just something I think to have conversations around.
No, and you bring up a good point. It's clear, well, there's writing the grant, getting the grant, and then actually implementing the program. And the reality is we all have to write to the funding requirements, but we don't always have to exactly execute the program that we wrote about. Not exactly, anyway. So, I mean, that's just the reality. But yes, I think there's some conversation that we can have to give folks further input on how to do that in the best way possible.
But I would like to add, that was a great segment.
It was great. And what's also great was the fact that we recorded that earlier this week, and so we did not do a costume change. We recorded that earlier. And speaking of which, our next segment is also recorded just a couple days ago. And it is Raul, our correspondent, did a great interview with Eddie Silverio, who's worked for a long time at this program in Washington Heights called Allianza Dominicana. That organization is now officially with Catholic Social Services, used to be with on its own, but kind of combined resources, but still doing the same kind of important arts and cultural and community center type activities, serving the young people in Washington Heights. And so with that, we will check out the segment that Raul was able to do.
So this is Eliminating the Gap. I am here with Eddie Silverio. Eddie, longtime friend and colleague. We've been through a lot together. Also, he is the division director of Allianza Dominicana as part of Catholic Charities. And so, Eddie, I know that your role and you've been engaged in the community for decades. Tell me a little bit about the services that Allianza now provides.
So, hey, Raul, how you doing, brother? I think that currently, right now, we provide services in 16 different programs from K all the way to 12 and adults. We're predominantly in Washington Heights and the High section of the Bronx. We also have programs in Harlem and Upper West Side and the Chelsea area of Manhattan. We do citywide youth employment. Right now, we currently have a program for 2,200 young people for the summer for youth employment. We have a winter youth employment program for 150, and we have an internship program for 40 young people. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, we hire close to 130 young people to be part-time staff throughout different programs in different roles, from receptionists to group leaders to activity specialists, aides. They do it all up and down. We also hire some of our parents to be family aides or parent aides in our high school-based programs to ensure that we engage our parents, because our concept always is that the community does for itself, and that our young people are participatory in the work that they do. That they really are a part of the process of evolving to be mature and positive young people and role models. So, quick to do, we have close to 3,000 young people in school programs, from community schools to transfer high schools. In after-school program, we have another additional 4,000 young people. Pre-post pandemic numbers have changed, as you should be aware, right? Mm-hmm. And then we have evening and other supportive services of maybe an additional 2,000 young people. I haven't mentioned our cultural center that we have, where we provide culturally sensitive activities for Afro-Caribbean. And we also have the Kennedy Center, where we do specifically a hoop haven program, which is a clinic for young people around basketball, but that's just a carrot. The real thing is engaging them with a youth advocate that works with them. And we have a group of core young people, 30 of them, that are middle school and high school age, and we really track them. So we've had young people as early as sixth grade all the way to when they graduate, and then they bring them back as alumni. So I didn't even talk about that, as you know. So our alumni circle is amazing. So we have close to 3 decades of alumni. So we have young people that come back from career day. They bring back their children now as participants. So, to walk into one of my day camps and see the parent drop off their child, I'm like, man, but you were there. I was your summer camp counselor. It was that experience. So, but that's Allianza. So Allianza yearly serves close to 12,000 young people and adults. And I forgot to mention our ESL program, our computer program, our citizenship program, all of the supportive services, mental health support that we give to our participants. And our role is children, youth, and families. So if you're in an elementary-based program and your middle school brother or sister is disconnected, we try to connect them. If your mom needs help, and the beauty of being with Catholic Charities, I think that's one of the best things, is that Catholic Charities has so many other federal services. We have 4 other divisions plus federation of 92 nonprofits that comprise what Catholic Charities is. So we're able to refer young people and their families to almost every need that they have. So that's the biggest blessing of transferring over to Catholic Charities, and the stability of finance and other stuff.
Yeah. So you did talk about the number of young people. What about the diversity? I know it's changed over the years as the city has changed. Tell us a little bit about who you're serving now, as well as who you continue to serve as far as diversity is concerned.
So I think our newest crop of young people here, I'm going to say close to almost 20% in all our sites, are African young people from all over the continent, the diaspora. We also have Latinos that are from Central America. And then, predominantly we offer services to Dominican, Puerto Rican, and African Americans. but it's a beauty because we see our young people as one, and one of the things that we make sure is that in all our services is that young people are connected and that they respect one another. So we do a lot of peer to peer. So our most recent kids get ESL support from our kids that are born here, and then we teach our kids what these different cultures are. I could tell you in one of my learning labs, I didn't even mention my learning labs, but one of my learning labs, I have a young African young man who the students are amazed, right? Because he's Muslim and he does his prayers throughout the day because he's there from 8 to 6. And he's been able to teach young people what it is to be a Muslim, what it is to be African. And it's beautiful because the exchange of culture that's happening now between young people, because this is the thing, right? So let's be honest, our educational system do not teach us about us. And that falls on us to teach us about us. And I think that one of the unique things of Allianza is that we've always respected culture. We do culture from drumming to music to dance. We have something that John Best taught us all. How we met is music for all or music for none. And we make sure that we do any event, and if we have 11 different cultures, all music is played. And we teach each other our dances. We make sure that we introduce ourselves to our food. And I'm giving you the soft approaches of community, but those are the most impactful ones. Then everything else in terms of structure, respect, and all that is given to young people. But just to make sure that we understand that we're different and our differences make us better, I think that's one of the key things to my division and the work that we've done. I feel that has been successful. So when I take young people that are recently arrived from Africa and they come into Washington Heights for the Dominican community, they don't feel like outsiders. They learn right away. They learn what are the hellos in Spanish, what are the hellos in Urdu. So so when we get there in the morning, we're greeting each other. So it's not, no one feels left out. I know those are soft skills that people are like, all right, but those are the most key things because it helps people feel welcome. And I think that's the most important.
Absolutely.
Many things.
So a lot of services you guys are providing, continuing to engage. We did talk, I know, before this a little bit about a lot of the challenges that you're facing. Talk about, what are the primary challenges in working with your current population? What's going on up there in Washington Heights and Harlem? You mentioned Chelsea as well. What are some of the challenges that you're facing?
Well, I think young people, the pandemic has affected us all, right? And I think one of the things that we're noticing is the gang issue in New York, which is something that we never heard of. It's real, and that's where our young people are landing. Very organized, very structured, through music, through being in the neighborhood, right? Very popular. So that's our big challenge. I mean, we have gangs that are traditionally from California who are now in hybrids, like the Rolling 60s. I'm like, we have no connection to that, but our young people through internet or through those that have been in prison come back home and they join these organizations and introduce it to our young people. And I think it's two cadres of you. You have your 13 to 18, they're just influenced and they need support, the guidance, and they're afraid, so they latch on to these young people. Then you have these 19 to 24-year-olds that the system has failed, every form of system, family, school, everything. And so they find these places to connect. The thing is that these are like organized crime structures now. You mean from drugs to music to credit card schemes, all that, and our young people are falling to that, right? So we're working, engaging our young people. I think one of the best things we did during the pandemic, it was these wellness calls, it was these Zoom calls, it was connecting the young people, and we try to do as many in-person opportunities that we had. If it was to give them an emergency cash card so we could help out their family, or if it was to give them an emergency food pantry, or it was just to give them a hoodie, right? Whatever it was, or we were able to give them a coat, right? So it's like a plethora of resources that we do have, and we're blessed, right? I want to say that as Catholic Charities, my division received close to $400,000 in undisclosed funds for us to just give out to young people. It was then tied to none of our contracts. So that really allowed and helped us to connect with families. But it's real. I think, we're dealing with a lot of depression. Young people coping with marijuana usage to be that, and that's real. Like these are the things that we're engaging our young people, and we're looking at it from the younger ages to that core 18 to 24. You know, one of the things I think I mentioned to you before our alumni. I think for me, I always try to use a lot of young men and women that are doing well now, that were in the same, we're up in the 80s, man, when it was really hard for us, right? In the early 90s, right, when crack was it. And those young people are now firefighters, nurses, doctors, lawyers, and working hard Americans, right? From construction workers, teachers, almost every career you can think of, we have alumni in. And they come back, and when they say those stories, and I'm one of those common denominators. Or you never want to go be in the gym when Eddie starts talking, right? But that is real, right? It's so. So I think that but we continue to engage young people where they're at. I think the big thing is to be on the block. I say this to people all the time, that you have to engage young people where they're at. You can't be from the building. You can't be from the office.
Right.
It can't just be from the classroom. You read the pedagogy of the place, but Paul Ferry says that you got to meet people there. If you're dealing with farmers, you got to go to the farm, right? You can't just think that they're going to come into the school building. Right. And I think we're blessed that we have school buildings, that we have centers, that we have office spaces, but we have to meet people where they're at. And I think, believe it or not, the one thing this COVID has brought us is Zoom. So we are engaging young people, and social media is a big thing. So, using all the different platforms they use to get to them, I think is important. And I'm sorry, Raul, you got to cut me because
No, Eddie, you're fine. You moved into an interesting area. It was talking about the young people coming back, and it was talking about the alumni network and how important that is. We know that there are young people, that there are thousands of stories of young people that have gained and benefited tremendously from the services. And then there are those young people that just didn't make it, unfortunately, for whatever reason, whether it was an opportunity missed, whether it was one of those things where they made a decision that affected them down the road in a negative way. Can you tell me about a story about a young person that might have not made it based on the challenges that you mentioned?
Unfortunately, brothers, I that's generational for me now. I will talk about two young people from two different generations. One of our first generation young people that we started engaging in the late 80s, early 90s, who went through the system and went through a lot and really suffered, had mental health issues. And every time came back home, tried to reconnect, we try to help them reconnect. And unfortunately, in the midst of the pandemic, right when the pandemic started, he took his life. And it just hit us, like all of us from the community just got together. We're just trying to figure it out, because this is someone, you see him, right? You saw him on the block and he was going through a struggle. Some people would just walk away. Now we feel bad. We should have engaged him more, right? So that one is for me very personal, because it's a kid that I really saw grow up into being an adult and go through all these struggles, and we just couldn't click with him what needed to happen. And then most recently, we had a 17-year-old who everybody in the school knew him. He had this bright smile. When you talk to people, that tell you, his smile, his smile, his smile. And we just couldn't connect with him. And the mom, we just felt, I'm going to give him what he needs because he's my son. Now understanding that is not 100% the approach sometimes, but you also need to give them structure, guidance, consequences, accountability, and that didn't happen. And unfortunately, he was hanging out with the wrong people, and something happened. It was internet nonsense, and when he went out, they found him outside, and they jumped him and stabbed him, and he passed away within hours. And I'm gonna tell you, that death right now is, because this happened like a couple of months ago. It's hard because every time I go to school, every time I try to engage anybody in the school, they're like, Eddie, I could have done this. Eddie, I should have done that. And I think that what I tell my team is, this is why we have to make sure we connect with those who are disconnected. Let's make sure that we continue that path and plan that we have that list, and that they're just not a list. Because what happens in the DOE when you partner with the DOE, they label them something and they don't really pay attention to them. And I told my team, that's the team of young people you have to address daily. Forget the others that are there in the building daily. It's those that are not in the building. And I think that that young man is going to be the catalyst for us to regroup and reconnect with those that are disconnected. But that's the reality, right? And we have to understand that we gotta pay attention to it all. I think when you break down young people, you have a group of young people that are always gonna be successful. Bro, you walk in, you were like, that kid is the next president or whatever. That young man or young woman is it. Then you have that young person just disconnect, and you're like, oh, we have to struggle with that young person. But and then you pay close attention. You assign a side person to that person. You make them part of your agenda in the staff meeting. So the conversation is happening. But then the mass of young people, which is your mid-level, that's the real work, because that's the balance. That's where you have the stars that don't recognize their stars yet. You have those that are struggling that can just become good folks, and you got to work with them. So I think that's where we then throw all of our support systems in terms of services, activities, engagements, but with the balance. And again, understanding that we are going to have losses, but it's how we work with the loss and how we engage the family. Because now we shouldn't disconnect ourselves from the family. We should be there for the mom and the sister, the people that have survived, and just give them that support that they're missing. And I'm gonna tell you that for me, that's been something that's worked. We wish we could save every child, but we know that that's part of the work that we do. We read it in the paper every day, right? But I think it's engagement, and also strengthening your staff. Wellness checks on your own staff, supportive services on your staff to make sure that your staff is equipped to deal with all this, right? Trainings are important. So this is Eddie talking now, and now sometimes we forget that some of us were given a toolkit when we were 15, Raul, because you and I were blessed. We worked with the most magical group of men and women when it came to youth development. I feel that everything and anything we needed, I learned between the age of 15 and 19. I would say that, right? And then from 19 to now, I've learned more, and I've gone and gotten other tools of the trade, because if you don't keep growing or evolving, then you're stuck. The person says they know it all, they don't know nothing. And I say this because, and I think that's the importance of, that's why I did this process with you, because I think it's important to hear each other out and then figure out how we collectively can support one another, because our community needs us. We are the triage in youth development. Like we're the one person that get the young person and process and see, okay, mental, educational support, family structure. Sometimes the kids just need someone to help them with their idle time and say, okay, look, come to this activity. Or just come here to the lounge and hang out in the lounge instead of being on the block, right? It's where you could get them and then pull them in, right? Because just get them in the door. I think once you get them in the door, we should have the staff and the tools that are needed to hook them in a positive light.
So no, you're good. You talked a little bit about some of the things that actually help to engage young people in a very successful way. That said, let's talk a little bit about some of the youth successes. Let's talk about some of the young people who that did take advantage of the services, did get engaged, and did sit and did stay with Eddie in the gym and listen to Eddie a little bit longer. Let's talk about some of those young. Can you share one or two of where they are now?
Yes.
That kind of thing.
So thank you, Raul. I mean, that one is going to be a very long list, and I wish I could go through the hundreds of stories, but I'm going to capture one young man who, to me, is very special, because he was that kid in the late 80s, early 90s, who became a teen father, who grew up in Washington Heights, was doing what we would say was in the right thing. And he walked into our employment center with a car radio. Remember back in the days when you had the Alpines, and he comes in with that radio, and he said, yo, I just had a baby, I need $15. And the person I interacted with said, well, I can't just give you $15, and I don't know if that's legit. Like, I want to help you. Long story short, that young man, we hooked him and we put him in this program. And today, he's running to be the president of the Hispanic Hispanic Fire, Hispanic Fire Members Society. And this young man was that kid, right? Put him in through college. We had him go to a SUNY school. Never knew that he was an experience living outside his home, upstate New York, and came back. Got a degree in computers. We hooked him up, made him a computer instructor, and then have him give those skills back. And then he kept evolving through the program. And then one day he said, "Yo, Goon," calls me Goon affectionately. He goes, "Goon, I want to be a firefighter." I said, "Do whatever you want. You could do whatever you want." Went, got in, and did what he had to do, and then started being active. He goes, "Eddie, I want to do something active." So he joined the Hispanic Firefighter Society, and now he's running to be the president, of that society, and he's bringing in young people to firefighting. So for me, that is your young president. Actually, the reason I'm bringing him is I'm actually bringing him back to Liberty High School to talk to my young Latino young people that are coming from different countries, to connect them and understand that we understand that this country is new to you, these buildings are new to you, but you have to find the right path early. Because, like he says, "Eddie, I wish I would have become a firefighter in my 20s. I would have been retired by now. I would have had a house, would have this, would have that." But I think that's the important. So I think, Bernie is one of those young men that I feel is what Alianza was about when we opened our doors. And then I have a young sister, and this one is a cool story. I wasn't going to talk about her, but it just clicked. And so I was going to London to visit my sister, and I post at the airport, and she's on my social media. She goes, "Eddie, I think I'm on the same flight with you." I'm like, "No, can't be." Raul, we didn't get to see the airport. The next day, my sister's giving me a tour of downtown London. I guess who I bump into? And I'm like, of all the places, I haven't seen you in 10 years. So she's a finance guru. She's doing her thing. She works for a big financial company. They have an office in London, so they stationed there for 6 months. And she's telling me this, right? And I'm like, whoa, and this is a young lady that was from 176. We see the Audubon in Amsterdam. You know the block. Raul, you went there to support me many a times. And grew up in a tough block, tough neighborhood, tough family, and survived. Was in our program, in one of our high school-based programs. We got her into college. She worked for us during the summer because that's our trick, right? We employ young people. We realized let's put money in their pockets. And this young lady always was in that track. And she just disconnected. And she said, "Ed, you said it to me when I was 19, that sometimes I have to leave the block to strengthen myself because it's just not good what's happening there, right? And not that they're bad people, but they're just stuck in this place." And she says, "I did that. I moved out and I'm in a different place. I'm in a better place." And to this day, her and her sister and her niece volunteer their time at our annual soup kitchen, and she always comes to our career days that we have in our different high schools, and she talks about the opportunities that we're giving her. So I have thousands of those stories, right? And I know from police officers to nurses, but those two stood out today because it's just the last thing I thought when I started doing this in Washington Heights in 1989 was that I was going to bump into a participant in London. I never thought I was going to go to London, to be honest with you. But to do that, and I think that's the beauty of the work and what we've been able to put together. And like I said, I have hundreds of those stories. And actually, I have like 5 more of meeting people in other countries while I'm on vacation and connecting it to Alianza. So I think that's the beauty of the work we do. But we've been blessed and to make a difference in young people's lives when they were ready. And I think the most important of this conversation is that we could catch them at 13, but they may be ready at 20. We could catch them at 20, they may be ready when they're 35. But and I think what we've been blessed with is consistency. We've been doing this work for 30 plus years, and our doors are still open. I'll leave it at that, brother.
No. So, so I think the global youth development professionals in the audience here, certainly appreciates all of the stories that you've shared, all of the personal experiences, all of the services that you shared. And I think you pegged it when you said he came in asking for $15, and we engaged him in a program that changed his life, programs, services that changed his life. Young people will come at you from different angles, in different places. And if you're prepared to embrace that young person, it becomes an opportunity. And, the good thing is that you don't have to feel like you're the only one that has to do everything. You have a support system of youth professionals. You have a support system in Catholic Charities. You have the support system that was the core of all of the work that Allianza did up there. So this is the lesson in a nutshell for, I think, our global youth professionals. So with that, I want to thank Eddie Silverio. Again, he's the division director of Allianza Dominicana. It's part of Catholic Charities. Eddie, thank you. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate you, man. And Raul is, I want to say, you were part of our growth, right? When we were doing some.
So that was a really good in-depth piece Raul did with Eddie from Allianza. It's interesting. We like to have things match up when we do these segments, and Eddie gave some really good specific tips too. I mean, real. I mean, not that Jennifer's weren't real, but they work in different places and have kind of a different auspice. But Eddie gave some really good tips too.
Yeah, the key theme around these two things have been like meeting people where they are and just meeting the needs of your particular community, because the needs of Eddie's community is different from the needs of somebody else's. But yeah, that's really at the heart of what we try to do with youth development.
Absolutely. This episode in its entirety really exemplifies what this podcast is all about. Some might say it was a great episode.
Great.
All right. With that, we cannot announce our next episode. It's in the works, so stay tuned. Until then, check us out on social media. Keep liking and sharing. We've given away several of these cool Eliminate the Gap shirts. So hit me up if you are interested in one, and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, like us, subscribe, all that good stuff. Hey, and let us know.
You bet. All right. You all be well. Cheers.